Well, Shirley, it's nice to have another Madigan across from me here.
Jack, I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you.
Lovely. Going well? Okay. Well, this is going to be kind of, well, chronological. As we go through this, I almost started asking you the questions for Richard and Mary Gray.
I'll try.
Well, Shirley, let's start at the beginning. When were you first drawn to the arts? When did this spark take hold for you?
I'm not sure you want to go back that far. It was when I was very, very young. And I was fortunate enough to come from a family that believed in the arts. We grew up in the arts. Reading was very, very important. When I was very young, my father brought in a professional ballerina to teach ballet lessons. She was a French woman, and she was doing a sabbatical in New York, and he found out about her and brought her into this tiny little town. So for a year and a half, we had a prima ballerina there who gave us lessons. And my mother would take us to Portland, Oregon, to Boise, Idaho, and then to California, you know, to see various plays and different things that had to do with the arts. And it was just a part of how I grew up. It was always there. And I don't know that I ever thought about it not being there. And I went to private boarding school, and then I started singing. My voice was professionally trained, and playing the piano. The only thing I never did was to do anything in the visual arts, and that's something that I always wanted to do. But as I got older, then I started looking around, and I think that I was very surprised that there were many people that didn't understand the true value of the arts and what a difference it made. And there are some people that don't grow up in that type of atmosphere, and yet the art does touch everybody's lives. You don't exist without that in some way. So even if it's just music. Now, where I came from, many people, like there would be the Little Bread Schoolhouse, which truly did exist for us. On Saturday evenings, everybody would go there. So there was quilting. That's a form of art. So the ladies would sit down, they would all hold the quilt, and they would take up where they were the week before. Somebody's cooking. And many people say, well, you can't talk about cooking as a form of art. I think that it is, though. And everybody played an instrument, and everybody sang. And then there would be, people would read from a book. Everybody would sit down, and then there would be a reading from some book, you know, some more chapters from the week before, and then the children would do homework, or they would do this, or draw pictures, or whatever. And so it was the type of art, but we never talked about it that way. But it was just a part of who you were, because you can't grow up and you can't be a person if art is not there. So as we progress and we progress, we move along. And I became interested in the Arts Council long before I became a member of the Arts Council. I was fortunate enough to know the people that were part of the Illinois Arts Council prior, you know, to coming on the Arts Council. And I worked with these people, and I listened to what they had to say. It was a different organization back then, because it was a lot of private money that went in, a lot of private funding, people making decisions where they wanted the money to go. There wasn't a process like I have in place now, which is a peer review process. And ordinarily we have more funds from the government. The basic concept of the Arts Council, as far as government funding, I believe very, very strongly in that. Because I think that it's a right of the people. The people are working, it's the people's money that comes back into the state, and it is the duty and obligation of the state to make sure that the people are provided with what they need. And the arts are something that they do need. They need it desperately. And it's a basic fabric of who we are and what is happening. And I saw this a long time ago. And I was involved with many organizations and doing many fundraisers and everything. And then when I was pregnant with my second child, I decided that I wanted to change everything. I started saying no, and I was trying to figure out, what can I do? What can I do? And I saw this as an opportunity to be able to give of my time and to make a difference also. I love government. I love the way that it works. I like the law. I think the law is very, very important. I went back to school to find out more about the law, and particularly to understand government and the law, because the basis for government is law, and you have to follow the law. And there are stringent laws and guidelines and rules set up. And funding for agencies within the state falls into all of this. But you have to have a good background, I think, for that too.
I was going to ask you, with a young family on the way and growing up, and the all of the things that come along with your husband's busy schedule and everything, I was wondering how you tried to carve out time for this and make this a priority in its own right.
Well, that was not even a second thought because of the reality of how I grew up. My grandfather and my father, my grandparents on both sides, but particularly my grandfather Ramago and my father, they always said you have to give back. We were fortunate. We lived in a teeny tiny little town. My grandfather had, most of the little stores that everybody had to have there. And he had the gas station, and he had the garage, and he had the little dry goods store and a motel, and we had another filling station and cabins that we rented out. We had the park in town, and we had our Easter egg hunts and the Christmas parties and Halloween parties and everything. And because my grandfather believed that you have to give back, and he constantly told us we wouldn't have any of this if the people in the town didn't come and buy our goods. If they didn't come to buy the gasoline, if they didn't come to have everything repaired here, if they didn't come to buy the food, we would not have what we have. And he had a very, very strong work ethic, but we always had to give back. Now, when I went to get jobs, everybody would go to get jobs in the summertime, and I was told, you will be working, but you're not going to have one of the paying jobs because the other people need those paying jobs, and you're going to let them have them. You have to give back. This is the way you're going to give back. And there were constantly ways like exchanging comic books. We had children that couldn't have comic books, and so then I set up a little exchange program when I was very young, and every Saturday I get all the kids together in town, come with your comic books, and then I would always say, okay, and there's a free box, because these are the ones we've all read too much, just take whatever you want. And then there'd be kids that couldn't go to the movies, so then I would take the bottles, sometimes from my own grandfather's place, and then go down to the local little liquor store and little liquor place, and we'd sell back the bottles so everyone can go to watch the movies. And so anyway, it was just giving back, making sure that everybody had what they needed.
So I want to ask one, where's this town? Where did you grow up?
Huntington, Oregon.
Okay.
It's right by the Idaho-Oregon border. So I fly into Boise, Idaho, and it's near where Sun Valley is. I mean, in that vicinity in there.
Beautiful up there.
Sometimes I have some desert, and I have some beautiful mountains too. So it's both.
Going back to the story you were just telling about,
yes.
the kids who didn't have.
Yes.
You saw early on that people were enriched by art of all kinds, and that people needed that, and that's still a driving force in what you're doing now.
Well, we always had, there was an Aunt Maggie in town. She taught piano lessons. We had another lady, we called her Aunt Kate. She taught children how to draw, when we did pictures and everything. And when you're in a little school, before I went to boarding school, I was in the public school there, and it's just one big school. And I mean, basically, the basic component of everything that we did, all the books that we read, all the classes that we had, there was an arts component in it. I mean, that's just the way it was. History had to do with the arts. Mm-hmm. Our reading, our writing, I mean, we were told that comes from ancient Greek times or whatever. This all came from so long ago. And the bottom line reality is, it is a form of the arts. Now, they didn't come up with that concept then. But later, as I started working with the Arts Council, I had no intention of giving this much time and effort to the Arts Council. I mean, I said, okay, now that I'm starting this other family and I need a break from all of the other not-for-profits, I'm going to do this. This looks very interesting, and it intrigued me. It also gave me an opportunity to spend a little more time with my husband, which, sometimes that time just didn't exist. If I would go to a function, perhaps. And the arts are just, I just thought everybody understood this and knew the value, and not everybody does. And you know, these last few years even, the world is ever changing. Within the arts world, it's like you don't know when it's going to change. It changes so rapidly. But now that we have this, you know, this terrible economy, for a while it was just crunch and everybody was just running around, and it was so frightening and so scary because you know the arts can't go away because they're a fundamental part of everything. But all of a sudden we found that the foundations, you know, and individuals were doing a little more than they usually do. And long before, a dear friend of mine, David Logan, passed away about 6 months ago, but he and I used to go to foundations, and we used to go to individuals and ask them, and other members of the board and of the staff, we'd say, look, we only have so much money. You know, do you have any money you might be able to put aside? Maybe you could help a few of these people we can't help. And we've tried to do that over the course of the years. And within the last few years, I mean, it's been amazing to see how people have come forward and what they have done, because I find that when times are so difficult and there's so much going on, like, you know, tragedy and horrible things, the arts, that's the basis. That's where all of the belief, you know, and the creativity and everything, the naturalness of everyone, it comes forward. And the, you know, the belief that it can happen. But the one thing about the arts is also, it's not just there, you know, to make us who we are and human, but it also enhances this whole society that we live in. But it also is an economic engine. When people come to see something, they come to be involved in the arts. It's not like they can go next door to see everything they want to see or be involved in everything. They may have to buy gasoline for their car. They may have to stay in a hotel. They may have to have a bite to eat. They may, you know, they may have to get on an airplane. Whatever they have to do, it adds to the economy. And when we give grants, you know, we don't just say, okay, here's your money, go off and do with it what you want. They have to match the money.
Right.
They have to match that money, and they also have to do a follow-up with what they do with the money. So, I mean, our check and balance system within the Illinois Arts Council is absolutely phenomenal. We do such a great business. We are probably one of the best businesses in Illinois. I mean, the way that we handle everything. It's difficult, you know, with a small amount of money, but we communicate. Part of the arts is communication, but we have tried to keep so close with everyone in the state to let them know what is happening, because we're all in this together. And, you know, we keep telling them, you know, it's difficult for everybody.
I want to ask about when you came to Chicago.
Yes.
You have a terrific world-class city here, rich with art and culture, but as you worked with the Arts Council, you saw firsthand as you went downstate into southern Illinois, central, western, eastern Illinois, you saw a lot of fabulous artists there and a lot of dedicated supporters of the arts. So it's not just Chicago-centric. There's a terrific fabric or a quilt of artwork all over, and artists working all over the state of Illinois.
Quilt is a very good word. I've used quilt before, you know, as well as, you know, cobwebs, because it all comes together. When I became the chairman in 1983, and even prior to that, a few years prior to that, I mean, I was dedicated in working throughout the entire state. I had seen also through the legislature, and going to the legislature, you could see that there was Chicago and the rest of the state. And one of my whole focuses was, you have to go to the entire state. And I think that comes from my background too, from coming from a very, very small area. And traveling, not only here in Illinois, I mean, I was very, very surprised to see what I saw. And the beauty of it is, you know, it's like a newborn child, because you meet these artists, and here they are. And some of them don't even realize that what they're doing is art, you know, because it's such a fabric of their life and of the community. Because without the arts, you don't even have a community. I mean, that's what brings everybody together, too. But I would see all of this, and it was like, okay, we can help you. You know, we can help you. You know, let's spend some time talking. Let's see what we can do. And now we have little arts organizations throughout the entire state. We have artists that people haven't heard from. I mean, we have this beautiful program with Channel 11, which has allowed us over these last few years, Arts Across Illinois. I mean, I fought and fought for that. It was a very interesting struggle, but we got there. And the people that saw this, they're like, oh my gosh, this is art. And I'm like, this is art. This is everyday people, you know, presenting to you what they do. This is their job. This is their job. And this is what they believe in. And this is how they make their money. And they also give back to the community and to the state.
And Arts Across Illinois, and incidentally, we have submitted features for that. We've worked with Channel 11 on that over the years back at our station.
Yes.
That's been a terrific means of communicating the value of art all across the state of Illinois. Could you speak to that a little bit more? It tells a lot of wonderful stories.
Well, I mean, when you just watch it and you're just so taken back. I mean, you see the basket weaver, you know, and you watch the intricate work that is done. You look at somebody, you watch somebody make a quilt. You were talking about a quilt, make a quilt. Or even do a fabric sculpture. You get to watch people working. And when they do that, a lot of times they will show the progression of what's going on. And then there's music that is presented. That some people are like, oh my gosh, I've never heard anything like this, but they like it. See, you know, music, and that's been something about Arts Across Illinois. Every type of music and dance that you can think of has been presented. And so many people are like, I've never seen anything like this. I didn't know this existed. And yet it's moved them in some way. Now, some people, you know, music moves people in different ways. Some people love a certain kind of music, not the other. And I always say, that's because inside of you, there's a part of you that just is a part of art, whether you know it or not, because it moves you. And a lot of people get frightened by that because there's something that enters into themselves, you know, that can make them feel, no matter if they want to feel or not, they have a feeling about something. Good, bad, or indifferent, you still feel. It's like looking at, you know, when you look at a work of a visual artist, you're like, oh my goodness. And sometimes you can't get away from that picture. You love it so much, or you're trying to understand it. And I think that Arts Across Illinois has brought so much of the rest of the state here where everyone can see it. I mean, and it's not just here, but other states also, you know, have taken some of the different programs that we've had and really have moved forward with it. And I just think that it's something that was a win-win-win-win situation. Difficult, and of course when we have a cutback in money, we don't get to have that wonderful program as much as we would like to, but I think that it was the beauty and the interaction between the agency and Channel 11, you know, being able to work with public radio and TV. We had done it off and on, but you know, to be intimately involved in something. And the beauty of it was we all started working so well together because we had a common goal and a common good. And I think that's what happens with all of the people once you start working with everyone. And I think that that's another thing the arts does. It brings people together. And even though some people are a little territorial because it may be music or it may be the dance, you know, or something, but the bottom line, if you can get to that point where you say the bottom line is, it's the arts, we need the arts. Government does have an obligation, you know, to fund it because it is for the good and the betterment of the people.
It's interesting you touch upon that note, because one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm working on a documentary about Paul Simon's life. Oh. And you know, Paul was one of the authors of the original act that...
He absolutely was.
Yeah.
He absolutely was. And you know what? He never waned from caring about the arts and working. I worked with him all of the time. And he was constantly, we've got to find something in the arts world so that when people come to Chicago, that's it. And I said, look, we've got this, we've got that. And he says, I know, but we need something else. You know, we need something else. But he believed and he cared. Well, look at his daughter. I mean, you know, she's very involved. I mean, she has her tapes. You know, she's constantly playing, you know. But that's what I'm saying to you. You see, it is not an extra part of a person. It is the person. It is.
And at a fundamental level, this is something, going back to the state support for the arts, this is something that fundamentally the state government should be in the business of working with the private sector or working with individuals. So even in these times when budgets are constricting, and we all know too well about that, how do you continue to make that case for the arts when you go down to Springfield, when you sit down in the appropriations committee's hearings, and these men and women they're balancing the books against Medicaid and all kinds of different things. How do you make that sale, that close the deal for the arts down there?
Well, by talking about the various things I've discussed. Also to talk about children, the major difference that it makes in the children's lives, and go into the education. One of the things we're trying to do is to make sure that the art stays in the educational system, and we have a beautiful program we've set up for that. But this is the beautiful part. We have a program, and I mean, I said this to you before, but the thing is, right now, what everybody is looking for, they're looking for agencies that can better the economy. Well, all you have to do is look at the Arts Council. And if you look at what happens, you cannot get a better, you don't have, you know, a better place to look than right here. Because I think that without the arts, our economy simply doesn't exist the way that it does. And I think that more people are starting to understand that. And then every now and then there'll be a legislator that says, well, you know, if the arts can bring in this money, then we shouldn't give you the money. And I'm like, no, that's not it. The whole idea is that the government must give back to the people. The people are moving forward and coming up with the tax money. They're working, they're doing their jobs. Part of the work and doing jobs has to do with the arts. I mean, some people say, oh, that person's just a singer, that person's just a dancer, that person's just a writer, that person's just a photographer, you know, that person, you know, is doing sets, you know, someplace, and oh, that person was just practicing, we're not going to pay them. But you see, that is a job. All jobs are different, and if everybody doesn't have a different job, we wouldn't have the society that we have. But if you take a look at the Arts Council and the funding that we do, and what happens fundamentally with the arts, and the amount of money that it brings back, and you know what? Think about when we have all the tragedies. I mean, like 9/11, New Orleans. I mean, the floods that we have. I mean, the horrible things that happen. Who are the first people that are called forward? I mean, after the disaster people come in, who do they call? They call on the artists to come, to perform. And that's how they start their fundraising. That's how they start bringing the money back in. And that's how they start building up wherever the devastation has happened. And it's like that now. That's what's happening now. Because we're going back to the basic fundamentals. Who are you? Where do you come from? What makes you who you are? It's the arts. I mean, and that's what it's all about. Everything else is a part of that. I mean, there's no educational system. There's no history. We would never know anything about our history if it wasn't for the arts. If somebody wasn't drawing a picture someplace or writing something down, singing a song. You know, our culture, where would the culture be? You know, that's why we always want people to make sure that they keep up with the culture they came from. Where did you come from? Make sure you carry that on. And that's what we do that also here at the Illinois Arts Council. We make sure that the cultures are carried on because that's vitally important. We want people to know about the United States of America. We want them to learn English so they can do the best they can here. But we want them to keep their culture also. Because you see, that's a vital form of the arts also. That's life, because it is life. Culture is life. And the arts is embedded in that.
One of the things that's been a hallmark of your tenure as chair of the Arts Council has to do with the educational programs that go from the Arts Council all the way down through the K through 12 schools. Could you talk a little bit about that? How are we making sure that that enrichment takes place at the youngest possible level and continues?
Well, the battle started when Governor Thompson was governor. And we had a wonderful NEA chairman. His name was Frank Hodsell. And we had Adrian Herscher at the Arts Council. And the new director had just come in for the NEA, and he had a big meeting. And one of his primary ideas was arts and education. And he started talking to agencies about it. And at that time, I was not the chairman. I was the second officer, but I had been called to this meeting because the chairman of the Arts Council didn't want to go, and he sent me. And it was very, very interesting and very intriguing. And being a teacher and a special education teacher also, I'm like, okay. And you know, when you're young and you're just full of energy and you think you can do anything, I'm like, I can do this, I can do this, you know. And so we sat down with everybody in our state. We got Mr. Hotzel here. We sat down with everybody and we started working on this very, very hard. We got it passed in the House and in the Senate. The legislature said fine. Everything went through, but they didn't give us any money. But it said the arts must be a part of the educational system. But it was a mandate with no funds, which happens very, very often. So that was many long years ago. And then finally the spark started happening again. You know, and this is very interesting because I think that the big spark for the rest of the general public started happening, and our other people that we work with, when the schools started having more problems with their monies and with the actual education system. Then everybody's like, something has to be done. What do they look at? They look at the arts. The arts is starting to move out. We've got to solidify that. So many people got together. I mean, there was just all kinds of people throughout the state that got together. You know, it's like you always say, nobody does anything alone. It's everybody working together that makes a major difference. So we managed to do this, and you know, we went to the governor. Everything we wanted didn't get done because then Thompson left. So then we had all the other governors, and then we started working. And we got down to the nitty-gritty of everything, and we're like, we already have the legislation, but we need something with the funds. Well, then when we were going through all of this, then Terry and I are like, okay, the basic ingredient that we need, which we started off with many long years ago, is we must have a program that's a basic program with the Department of Education. Mm-hmm. Because in order to have an education in the arts program, we have some of those set up within our own system. But you need a truly good partnership where both of us are working together and it's legitimate and it's in the system. You know, you get it into the government system like that together. Then it's legitimate. And then, you know, we're having trouble with the funds, but it does exist now. And we're moving on that. And we have a lot of people. We have a good advocacy throughout the entire state to work hard on this. And I think, you know what? We have a new mayor now. We have somebody new that came in for, you know, the new education person. And they're looking at the schools. And one of the things they are talking about, they're talking about the arts, you know, and that they are important and they are basic. And that's what you see because, you know, they're having problems. It's just like the people, the economy. Everybody goes back to the basic, and the basic is the arts, you know. So it's an interesting process. It's an interesting process.
It's interesting too because when we talk to folks who are working in the arts, like the Grays yesterday, the thing
they are phenomenal, just phenomenal.
And in Illinois in general, but in Chicago, you know, if you want something done, everybody knows everybody. They pick up the phone and they get things done. This is a state that can do stuff when it puts its mind to it, and that's really remarkable when it comes to the arts.
Well, we have more schools opening also that are dedicated toward, you know, there's one school that's going to, you know, someone's working on now with special needs, but a big focus is going to be on the arts. We have a new school just for the arts, which, you know, is being worked on right now. And because this is a basic concept which people believe in, and you're right. You get a telephone call, you go to a luncheon, and you sit down, and here are all these people. And they're very, very interested, and they want to move forward, and they're willing to give money, you know, to make sure that this does happen, you know. And people don't give their money where they don't believe, and they don't think that it can make a difference. They're only going to give their money if they know for sure now that that money is going to make a major difference and have a major impact, you know, on the city, on the state, and particularly on the economy, you know, that something positive money-wise is going to come. So by educating these children, you're setting them up not only to reach their own full potential, which is what we basically want, but you're setting them up to have the very best jobs possible and to be competitive, not only here in their community or in the state, but throughout the United States and in foreign countries, because you have to be practical. We don't exist in a vacuum alone. The United States is strong. We're not as strong as we were because of everything that's been going on. Everybody has to go, you know, throughout the entire world to get jobs done. People are traveling more than they've ever traveled. I mean, and the reality is there's a lot of businesses over in, you know, throughout, you know, every place else other than the United States too.
As you look back on this incredible tenure, what are the things you're most proud of for what the Arts Council has accomplished, Shirley? I know it's going to be a long list, but...
No, it's not going to be a long list. Right now, I'm happy that we still exist, that we have a budget, that we're a part of state government. What I'm most proud of is, I'm most proud of the staff here at the Illinois Arts Council, of the board members of the Illinois Arts Council, throughout the years, the way everybody has worked together. We don't always agree. I am rather outspoken at times, and I try very hard to listen to people because I always like to learn. I think until the day we die, we're learning, and we have to be open to that. And I have learned so very, very much. I mean, I'm thankful for the governors that we've had and how each governor has worked with the Illinois Arts Council. And that doesn't mean that we always agreed, because we didn't. But I don't give up easily. And if I would lose my passion for this, and if I felt that I couldn't do a good job, and I have some good sides and some bad sides, because, you know, there's always, okay, this is, you know, Mike Madigan's wife, let's get her. So I deal with that all of the time. I can only hope that the fact that we've turned this into a very strong business that works well, you know, for the economy, and works extra well for the people in this state and makes a major, major difference. I think that that's very important, being able to work with the people and getting a lot of people to understand that the basic concept is it doesn't matter who you are, what you're interested in, as long as we work together for the good of the arts. You may be for-profit, you may be not-for-profit, that's what we do here. But that's another thing. The not-for-profits and the for-profits have been coming together to work, you know, during these times. We worked with other agencies throughout the state, but since we've had this economic, you know, this whole economic situation, we are working with almost every state agency, putting together programs that you never thought were possible before, and making such a major difference, but also in other states, and we have worked with other states too. I think that the Illinois Arts Council is one of the strongest state agencies in the whole United States. We continue to have very strong and innovative ideas. Even though the money is decreasing, what is happening with our staff is just phenomenal. We have new programs that we've put forth. We're working with the National Endowment for the Arts more than we ever have on actual programming. We're working with other states. You know, they help us, we help them. You know, we go to conferences and we exchange ideas, and it's like, oh my gosh, look at this. And then they're saying, okay, how did you do this? Well, how did you do that? And then we're able to have conferences, and then we all come together, you know, to help one another, to get people to conferences, you know, to bring in speakers. I mean, we're moving. We're not sitting back and licking wounds. We're moving forward, and we're making a basic difference in the economy.
And along those lines, where do you see things going in the next 5 to 10 years? What are the next things on the horizon that you already see and that you're working toward?
Well, okay, so the arts and education is major, and I think that that's something that we continue to work, you know, to shore up, and that's constantly changing, not only because of the education system, but because of the arts. And, you know, to make sure that we have true artists that are going into the schools and making a major difference in these young people's lives. To also continue to work to make sure that the arts does remain a part of government. I think that that's vitally important. And you have to understand something. When you say looking forward, since we are government and we deal with government, then it's a continuum of trying to make sure that we let the legislators know about us and what we're doing. And that's not, and it doesn't matter how many years anybody is around. The legislature changes. Every 2 years the representatives turn over. Every 4 years the senators turn over. We work with the aldermen here in the city. We work with the congressman in Washington, D.C. And there is just constant change. And we have to continually talk to them, educate them. We have to invite them to see what's going on. We have to let them know the value of what is happening. And we have to be ever vigilant in that. I mean, one of the things that we do now, we go over at Millennium Park, we have these wonderful programs with the city, with other agencies in the state. We've all come together, and one of the beautiful things about that is we're bringing artists in from outside of Chicago, and it has made a major difference, similar to the program at Channel 11. We're going to continue to work in that way, to bring in, to make sure that everybody is involved. The money that we get from the state is for everybody. And that's vitally important. Some people say, well, you're talking about the arts. That means only, the elite, the people that have money. And that's not it at all. But a lot of times the people don't understand that here in Chicago, and it happens in other states, but we know about Chicago, the people that do believe in the arts and do have money are continually helping. They're helping not-for-profits. Maybe they're helping for-profits. You talk to the Grays. Richard and Mary. They continue. Who needs help? What can we do? And they are there, 24/7, and they have been for so long. And we have so many people like that throughout the entire state that are saying, okay, what can I do? Sandy Guthman, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do to make a difference? I could just go on and on. I don't like to single out certain people, but we could go on and on. Like when we had the Lincoln Academy, then Judy and Stan Eikenberry, they are a basis of our state, but they continue to function in a business sense, in an art sense. And Judy this last year for the Lincoln, for the whole Lincoln Festival thing, when everything came up, she was just there front and center. And making sure that everything was put together the way it was supposed to be put together. And all, in Virginia and Mike Hogan, they were so proud of everything that was going on, I can tell you these people, they continue to say, what can we do? How can we help? And they're real voices. They're real solid voices. And I could just go on and on. There's so many people that are like that because they understand the value and, what happens and what will continue to happen. So, cultivating that and keep moving forward and just making sure that these young people are educated properly and that all people are involved and a part of what's going on.
I've got one more question for you. You've been doing tremendously. This is wonderful. Looking back, what's given you the most personal satisfaction about what you've done with the Arts Council? What's been achieved?
Well, first of all, we have to go back to the reason that I thought, one of the other things that I came here was because I had my children, and I felt that the arts make a major difference, and I wanted to make sure that everybody had a part of that. Mm-hmm. So it has allowed me to raise my family, and I think that they also understand about giving back. I think that they understand the arts better, I hope. They saw me doing different things, and even though they didn't like some of the time I spent away from them, I think that I'm hoping that now that they're older, they understand that I was trying to make a difference in other people's lives, and that, in fact, would help them also. It's hard for children sometimes when you're away from them, but you really believe that you can help people that can't help themselves sometimes. And I'm not saying that people don't know what to do, but when you're dealing with the government and you're dealing with the arts and you're dealing about how do you handle all of this, it's very difficult sometimes, and to even have an interest to want to do this. And I think that bringing people together and setting up the type of, I always say business, but the type of agency that we have, where we do have a review system, we have a strong check and balance system. I like to think we have one of the best staffs in the country here at the Illinois Arts Council. And like I said, they continue to thrive, they continue to be positive. And then, what will happen? We'll have somebody that's retired and they'll come knocking. Is there something I can do for you? I'd like to come and work with you. And, they come back and they say, I'm only going to work with you for a year. I'll help you out for a year, And they stay on because there's another new program that will come forward. And the NEA will say, we're trying to work on this. And we'll say, okay, we're here. Let's see if we can work something out. I've just been proud of the way the agency has moved forward. And I guess one of the things you can always be proud of is when you're down and out, everybody comes together. Everybody comes together, and they fight harder, they care more, and they want to be very, very involved. And I like to think that I've been very open, and I've tried to communicate with everybody and just make sure that every single person that wants to be involved is involved in the best way possible. I don't think, see, this is not an agency of a specific thing, even though we say the arts. This agency is for everybody, and it encompasses everybody and everything. There's nothing in the arts that doesn't exist in the world or in this city or in communities. And you know what, throughout this, I would say one of the things that I really love seeing, when we were having so many trouble and all the problems in our little towns and cities throughout the state, they had no money. You remember when all the little storefronts were closing down and everything? We would travel, and Rhoda Pierce and I spent a lot of time traveling during then, and they would start, you know, the community would say, oh, there's a theater, they're going to renovate the theater. Once the theater was renovated, the little towns came back to life. They come back to life. The strip malls were just killing America in a sense, you know, some of the downtown America. And now we've been revitalized. There's been change, and then everybody's learned to sort of get along together. And it does make a major difference when, you know, you have something like a theater that goes back and all the community comes together. If you go to some place where they're working on the theater, everybody in the community comes together. And I think that that's one of the things. If nothing else, that people understand and they know that art does exist, that it is there, it is present, and that it's not for somebody over there or something over there. It's inside of us. It is what is here in our heart, our soul, our minds, our body. That's what makes us who we are. And it's what brings us to our full potential. And it's everybody that I have ever worked with. I've been very, very fortunate to have worked with so many people. Some believed, some didn't believe, but most came to say, okay, I understand what you're saying. I'll do my best to work with you.
I think you nailed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything we missed?
Well, the only thing that I would say about the Lincoln Academy is that I came to be a part of the Lincoln Academy under Jim Thompson. And I knew that Lincoln existed, but I didn't realize just exactly who he was and how important he was and the value that he had, not only for the people here in the United States or in, you know, the state of Lincoln, but in foreign countries too. But Jim Thompson and a friend of his, Dan Wild, they were collectors, yes, you know, of Abraham Lincoln memorabilia. And so then I would see the memorabilia, and then we'd sit and talk about it, look through books, look at all of this. I started learning so much more, and I was very grateful for that, because history, see, I like to deal with the present, you know, what's here now, let's try and get this done. We'll draw from the past, and that can help us, you know, to move forward to the future. But dwelling on a lot of it is not something that I used to do. And I was just very proud of the fact, you know, that I had this introduction, you know, to Lincoln. And very fortunate to have worked with people like Laura Lynn Ryan, God rest her soul, and George Ryan, because they really moved forward with getting the Lincoln Library, you know, set up. I mean, they traveled not only here in the States, but internationally, raising funds, I mean, to make this happen. And they truly believed. There was a whole group of people, you know, that worked on that. I mean, Governor Edgar was always there in the forefront, you know, dealing with everything. And the Lincoln Academy is so unique in what it does, because, you see, it makes sure that a living person is honored. Because there's so many times, you know, when we do awards and different things, you know, we're like, oh, we could have given an award to that person, but the person doesn't, you know, doesn't live right now, you know. But and also what they do is they bring people out that a lot of people don't know that they do all of the things that they do, that the difference that they make in all of the different fields that they work in, because a lot of these people work in the background, and they try to make sure that an excellent job gets done, and they're willing to work with all kinds of people. And they're not always the people that you see on the front pages or you see on television all the time, but they're the people that are working in the background. And that's where I like to go and look.